So I feel like, I may get some pushback for this, but I feel like the days of the fighter pilot may be numbered. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we're
Yeah.
seeing the implementation of drone aircraft. I mean, they've got a drone tanker out there refueling aircraft now. I feel like, and you can tell me if I'm way off base or whatever, but I feel like what's going to happen is right now we have our Air Force is mainly man pilots, and we have drones that help out with ISR, with that surveillance and stuff like that. At some point, I feel like it's going to become one pilot, man pilot, with their three other drone aircraft flying with them, and they're kind of controlling whatever's going on. And then at some point, we're going to be like, why do we even have the guy up there? Just pull him out. That's too dangerous. Because if he gets shot down, now we got to go rescue him, and there's all this other stuff. We could just put a drone up there. Do you see that happening? Do you see a day when kids are like, Grandpa, he was the last fighter pilot?
Yeah. 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 I mean, someday for sure. I think, at some point, I don't know when that will happen, but it's not even close right now. Not even close. Combat is the most dynamic environment in the world. So when we go, I think the biggest misconception that people have about flying fighters is it's this like 1v1 cage match. You're just going up dog fighting. I mean, Top Gun pretty much did that, 4 aircraft going into this this threat country. That's crazy. We go in with 100 different aircraft, and each aircraft has their own specialty. And it's not even aircraft, like it's multi-domain. So you're talking about space, cyber, you're talking about guys on the ground, you're talking about ships, missiles, all these things integrated tightly, and things go wrong. And it really takes a person to be able to be creative with their solution there's going to be some fallout to bring this, team together to be able to solve a tactical problem. And the enemy, on the other hand, they're doing everything they can to disrupt your decision making. So, if you're going against a drone that really only knows how to attack one way, they're going to find a way to attack that. And I think a lot of these tech companies are figuring this out. So like Tesla with their, automated driving, they were saying 5 years ago that we're going to have fully autonomous vehicles. Their autopilot is called full self-driving. It definitely doesn't do that maybe on a highway, definitely not through a city, definitely not through a shopping center. And that's without an adversary. What if I were to tell you, all right, I want you to design software to be able to take a car from LA to New York, through New York. And then I said, I need you to prevent that vehicle from getting there. You could do whatever you want. You can spray paint the lines into concrete barriers. You could use lasers to jam their cameras. I'm sure you could find a way to prevent it from getting to that destination, because it's exponentially more difficult to do that. So I think humans and AI drones, I think the future is us working together. We have some huge strengths that we're able to overcome. And one of them is being able to creatively solve problems. Computers aren't great at doing that. They mostly use linear regression. So they're going to, just see what happened in the past and then forecast that for the future. So it's really us finding ways to work together, which is really difficult. You see that with a lot of autopilots on commercial airlines right now. So the autopilot will kick off at the worst time and say, oh, I'm overloaded, I can't do this. Here's the pilot. And the pilot, meanwhile, has gotten complacent because they're used to the autopilot doing that. So now they have to step into this crazy situation and solve it for the AI. So instead of seeing, all the AI and tech companies saying, and there's one tech CEO about 6 months ago who said, basically, fighter pilots are going to be obsolete in 5 years. That's not how fast the DoD operates. There's no way. I would bet any amount of money that's not going to happen. And I guess there's some proponents on the fighter pilot side that says we don't need drones, we can do it all ourselves. And I would say probably in the middle. We're going to go out with these drones, but we're ultimately going to be in charge of it. So you can help mitigate risk. Maybe we'll stay a little bit further back and give the drones a little bit higher threat missions in there. But you absolutely need a pilot in the loop. And to say, right now we have like MQ-9 Predators. They're, pilots are flying from trailers in Vegas. I would say that anything is jammable. So if you need a signal to go from that trailer in Vegas all the way to, the Yellow Sea, there's a lot of different avenues that you can use to jam that signal. So these drones or aircraft are going to have to be able to make decisions on their own. And we're not even close to them being able to make all the decisions that a fighter pilot or, any person can make on the fly. Not, I would say not even a quarter of the way there. So maybe in 2100, if I
Wow,
were a
that
betting
far
man,
out, huh?
if I was a betting man, maybe 2100 is going to be the last of the fighter pilots. And as
Wow.
we get closer and closer, drones will do more and more things. But
But
we're not even close.
do you think it'll move do you think it'll move into AI driven aircraft, or do you think it'll become remotely piloted aircraft first? I feel like it would become remotely piloted first, because why risk putting a guy out there if we don't have to?
Well,
You
we have
know.
that right now. We have the MQ-9s. So
Yeah, but an MQ-9 is not an F-16.
yeah, okay, remotely piloted fighters.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about on like a different level. I don't know. I see, you mentioned in one of your other videos, you talk about the S curve of like technology going through its like cycle of development and stuff like that. And I feel like we're where you're talking about at the beginning of that S curve, where a lot of the mistakes are being made, a lot of the money's being used right now, because we got to get a good foundation of understanding and like technological capability before we can push on to the things that we really want to do. I mean, would you agree with that? Do you think we're at the beginning of this rather than like farther along, like some people believe?
For sure. We're at the very infancy of this, especially when it comes to combat, especially when it comes to, you know, yeah, especially when it comes to combat, we're at the infancy. We're at the very beginning of this S curve. So as opposed to trying to replace fighter pilots with this, this technology that isn't fully developed, I would be a strong proponent of trying to find ways that it can help to augment the fighter pilot. And so, yeah, that might be one pilot going out with a couple of drones, being able to control them. I think that's pretty useful. I think since the beginning of probably of the computer, so I'd say probably the F-16, first electric jet, they did a lot of things in that aircraft that helped to automate things for the pilot. One of them, with the flight control system, they had auto trimming, so it would auto trim wherever you wanted to go to 1G. So I mean that, I'm sure they had to deal with F4 pilots saying, you're not a real pilot, you're not a man, flying that thing. You don't even have to trim the thing. So now with the F35, we've taken a big step forward where it's able to automate a lot of the data management so that the pilot can really cleanly see the information and data. So I think, if I were king for a day, I would be investing heavily in AI, but as a way to augment, pilots and use the best thing that we have is our brains to be able to make creative decisions. Mm-hmm. That's what I would do, with maybe the ultimate goal, in 2080, we're talking, super far away, of fully replacing them. But if you're trying to replace them right away, I think it's going to turn out like, the missiles in Vietnam, where, they took the gun off the F4 and they just had, air-to-air missiles on them, and they didn't work as well as they thought it would work. So I think that, if you try to go in with a fully autonomous fleet, that's what's going to happen right now. So, just having lived this life for a while, I don't think we're even close to being able to go to a fully autonomous, Air Force. And I'm a big proponent of technology. I think that's, technology has augmented me. I'm able to fly 100 times faster than I can run, carry 100 times more, much more capable than I could without this, machine around me. But it's a whole different animal if you want it to do all this stuff on its own.
Yeah. I think, man, in the next 20 years, the changes in technology that AI is going to bring is going to be mind blowing. That's why I don't know if 2100 is. I think that might be too far out. I feel like it could be sooner than that, just because of the rapid pace of technological developments. It's going to be weird where something like that, like flight, is going to become like a novelty. Like why would a human ever fly a plane? That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Elon Musk said the same thing about cars. He's like, I think he said in like 100 years or whatever, people are going to look back and be like, I can't believe we allowed people to drive these monster machines themselves. These like giant death machines,
Yeah.
What
Was it
were we
50,000
thinking?
people a year die from that? I think it's one of the leading causes of death.
Yeah. So it's like the perspective we have on it's way different than the people of the future when they look back and be like, what? Like, why would you ever do that? That's crazy talk.
Yeah, it's like, you had to hunt your own bison with like a spear. That's crazy to think about right now. So yeah, I mean, 2100 might be, I would say 21, and who knows? There's so much uncertainty involved with this. I'm just trying to illustrate the point that, it's going to be a long time, and it's going to be that S curve where, the inflection is going to go up. We're going to make some really seamless teams between AI, wingmen and aircraft, and then maybe 2080s or something. It's going to be like, we're going to, there's going to be our grandchildren are going to have this conversation of like, you're really not cutting it as a pilot anymore. Maybe we can just get rid of you. But to think, these tech companies are getting billion-dollar valuations saying that they can get rid of fighter pilots in 5 years. That's not going to happen.
No.
For example, the F-35 the X-35 flew in 2001. It didn't get IOC, initial operating capability, till 2017. That's like 16-year cycle. I think the F-22 was like a 15-year cycle. The development for these aircraft is crazy. It takes a really long time to be able to do that. And like in the DoD, the decision cycles to be able to change things is much slower. So maybe a company like Apple or Google or Tesla could make a fighter in maybe 2040 that can replace the fighter pilot. But imagine, having to go through the DoD and being able to go through the bureaucracy and then being, seeing the last, fighter pilot. I would say, if I were to bet, I'd say 2100 isn't too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It'd be not unlike SpaceX coming in and being like, hey, we're just going to build our own rockets. Like you guys did all this over here. That's cool. We'll take what we know from that and just our own perspective, coming at it from a completely different perspective rather than these career military people or career like government engineer people working on a project. When you bring in a civilian sector side, they're just going to look at it in a different way. And, I don't know, maybe they will come in with some crazy, could you imagine a Tesla? What would it look like? It'd be like an X-Wing fighter or something like that. Cause Elon Musk is a big nerd.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be great. And I think that's really where the DoD is headed. I think it was really the 1990s that all the primes got, merged, and we went from like 30 primes to like 3. Lockheed,
what do you mean?
Boeing.
What do you mean by primes?
Primes are like Northrop Grumman, all these different these different companies that made different aircraft. So
Gotcha.
There's like 30 different aircraft manufacturers in the 80s. And in the 90s, we consolidated to really 3 major primes like Lockheed, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman. So basically, you have 3 different companies. Boeing specializes in the big planes, Lockheed in the fighters, Northrop in the bombers. So you really know where the contract's going. So compare that to the civilian industry where you have, Apple, you have Google, you have all these different companies competing. Same with the car manufacturers. Competition is a great thing. And so I think really the DoD recognized this, at least in the late 2000s, and they've been really trying to bring in more civilian companies. That's what I was doing with the Defense Innovation Unit. They're like, all right, we have a lot of problems within the DoD. How do we bridge that gap and just get civilian companies to solve these problems for 10 times cheaper? We don't need a, $1 million toilet seat. Like, how do we get these guys to just do a commercial off the shelf type application? So I absolutely think that's the future. The difficulty is, classified stuff, it really stovepipes things. So that makes it really difficult for, Justin LLC to go and try and, build a new missile or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you're talking about where you're saying like, how can we use this off the shelf stuff and make it work? Because that's really how we won like World War II and these older wars, is because none of this stuff was like so crazy technologically advanced. Like a lot of this stuff was just easy stuff. Like, hey, Ford can make this pretty easily. Let's just have them, let's have them do it. And I like what you're talking about with the competition. Like if we're talking about the car side, you have your big car manufacturers. You got your Ford, your GM, and stuff like that. But there's so many like little tiny car manufacturers in the civilian market. Those aren't your only choices. You don't have to go with one of those. So yeah, I think that could only bring. Again, it's all about perspectives. If you're looking at defense stuff, you want to bring in multiple perspectives because there may be something that you're not seeing because you've only been looking at it from one way, and you bring in a smaller company that's working in a different environment because they may not have the fiscal like abilities that a giant corporation does, or they may have different kind of technologies that they're working with. They may see something completely different because of their perspective. So that's really good. And it's good to hear that the government and the military understands that, and they're putting together, like, would you call it the defense? What is it? DIU?
Defense Innovation Unit.
What all did you guys work with in that? Or what you could talk about?
We work with physiological monitoring. So there's a whole bunch of different programs going on there.